Week 1 is in the books. We're looking ahead at week 2. But Mitch, are we the team that busts out of the gates like Lee Win, Princeton, or Morrison? Or are we more of the team that's trying to find our identity? Where are we at here headed into week 2? You and I.
I think we talked about this at the beginning of the year. I think that this is our fourth full year. I feel like we're more in the Lee Win status. I don't know that we have the accolades that Lee Win does, but I feel like we have that consistency going week after week. So yeah, I feel pretty good about where we're at.
Man, what do we got to do to win a podcast state championship? That's the next goal.
Bring me the contenders, right? Show me who the competition is.
Well, let's just keep doing what we do week in and week out. Let's get into it.
Talking Illinois high school football.
If your goals are as high as you talk about, tonight's the night you go out and just take one more step.
It's a view from the West.
And it starts right now!
Welcome back to View from the West podcast, the podcast covering Illinois high school football on the western side of the state of Illinois. I'm your host, Greg Armstrong, joined once again, as always, by Mitch Stormer. Mitch, here we go. Week 1 is done. Week 2, we're looking ahead. We've got some great matchups coming. How you feeling here?
Yeah, it was a fun week, right? We anticipated that. We knew that there was going to be a lot of intrigue across all the conferences. There was a lot of question marks that we wanted answered from certain teams, wondering what they would look like, wondering if they had found their identity yet. So I think there are still some of those questions, right? Week 1 tells us a lot, but it also doesn't tell us the whole story. It'll take a few weeks for that to really come into play. But like I said, some answers we got, and some surprises, Greg. Some teams that won that maybe we weren't expecting. Some teams that lost, same thing. So, performances, some new players that we weren't expecting. So, week 1 was great, and looking forward to recapping this and even looking down the road to week 2.
Yeah, Mitch, we'll get to our viewpoints in a second, but we were joking in the open of the show about, are we the Lee Win? Are we the Princeton that busts out of the gates here in week 1? Or are we still a work in progress? Looking around the area, you saw some teams that are still trying to figure some things out. And Mitch, I talked a little bit about it on the podcast, but I got in the Instant Reacts podcast, I got to be honest. My Friday night was kind of clunky. I could not get in a good rhythm, and some things were kind of out of my control. I'm sometimes at the mercy of how the game plays out, but I stayed a little bit, probably stayed a little bit too long at my first game, Mercer County and United, and was kind of waiting for one more big play. And then by the time I got to Rockridge, I had already missed Newman's pick 6. So I already missed their touchdown. Luckily, I got Rockridge's touchdown in the second quarter. They were up 7-6. So when I left the game in the fourth quarter, I felt good. Like there's a potential that I have the winning touchdown, essentially. It happened in the first half, but it still would have won the game. And then, man, Brian Stocking kind of burst my bubble and says that Newman scored again when I wasn't there. Yeah. So we'll get into the game details later, but I feel bad. I missed out on Newman's best highlights, and I hate that feeling.
Well, and that goes back to things that we've talked about before, that if fans could experience a Friday night at the Score, just to know what goes into a production like that, and like you said, you're on a time crunch. So you are at the mercy of whenever you arrive at that game. You could miss 3 or 4 touchdowns by a couple of minutes. It all just depends on so many factors. So, a tough night for you. Getting back into the swing of things, but again, things like that you just can never control. But I have confidence that you tried your best. The highlights were great that you shot. So kudos to you for getting back into the swing of things. But we'll look for you to improve in week 2.
Yeah, well, I'm geared up. I'm excited for a big week 2. I think I know where I'm going. We'll talk about it in a little bit here.
Was there a puller pop on your trip?
Oh, absolutely. So
where?
I left.
Where was it?
I left work and headed on my way over into Illinois. I stopped at the Rock Island Circle K right down by Augustana's campus there, and grabbed one, headed up the hill over to Moline, stopped in, said hey to the guys at WQAD and gals. Camille wasn't there, but I said hi to everybody, and then I hit the road. So I had a Polar Pop on the way to my to Aledo. So
excellent.
So I was definitely fueled. I was well hydrated, but so like I said, I'm geared up, ready to go for week 2. So Mitch,
good to know.
We start our show with our viewpoints. We'll do a couple viewpoints each. Basically, the headlines of week 1. I'll default to you. I'll let you start this week. What's your, name them both. Let's go. Give me both of your viewpoints.
Okay. As I said in the beginning, we had some surprises this week, but we also saw some things that played out as we expected. So it was kind of like, it was good to see that happened. And let me explain that.
Okay.
And again, I don't know if I'm going to steal yours, so I apologize if I'm going to.
It may happen. It may happen.
Let me start with Princeton. We knew that Princeton is the top team in the track. We knew that they're the top ranked team in 3A. We had questions about who might be their star player this year, and certainly didn't expect that in week 1. We knew they had guys coming back. We knew, that they had Noah Laporte coming back. We know that they had Ace Christensen coming back. But little did we know that Coach Ryan Pearson had a secret weapon waiting in the wings that no one had seen on film because he's a sophomore. No one knew about him. And just to have a weapon like sophomore Casey Etheridge in your lineup, we'll talk about it in a minute. In his debut, 234 yards, 4 touchdowns to pace the Tigers. So just what Princeton needed, right? A weapon that no one knew about. Awesome to see. Again, another year of Princeton football. Looks like it's going to be a lot of fun to watch.
Yep, absolutely. His name will certainly be brought up, later in the pod when we get into that into the Three Rivers and into that Princeton game. That's a good one. I agree. That was something that stood out to me. What else you got? What was you have a second one?
Yeah, let me stay in the track, and we'll get into this too, because I spoke to head coach Mike LeMay on Saturday. What a win for Newman. I mean, we were high on Rock Ridge. The rankings were high on Rock Ridge. I still think Rock Ridge is going to have a really good season.
Yep.
But for Newman to come out to win the way that they did, super impressive for Coach LeMay, for that team, sophomore quarterback, really good defensive unit like we thought they were going to have. And I'll get into a little bit more of that conversation later, but really just probably the win of the week, right? Newman upset win over Rock Ridge puts them on a really, really good start. Newman's got a couple of tough games coming up here after week 2, so we'll get into that too. But really impressed with this Newman victory in week 1.
Yep. All right, I got a couple of viewpoints before we get going, but I got to start at the game I was at first in this one. I was, just to be honest, I was surprised when I saw what United did against Mercer County. I was at the game at the beginning, and even when I left, it was a 1-score game, and I kind of wondered if in the second half that Mercer County would kind of come to life. I give United credit that they hung tough. We'll talk about their effort later on in the show, but what a win for Coach Milroy and this United Red Storm team. I mean, it was a tough year last year, no doubt about it. And for them to come out in week 1 on a team that we were pretty high, playing a team we were pretty high on, to get that win on the road, that's a huge win. That's my first viewpoint. I can't wait to talk about that game. Second viewpoint, Mitch, we knew the Morrison Mustangs were fast, but holy cow. I mean, you saw the game more than I did, but just the stats, we'll get into it. This team looks like it could be really electric. It could make some headlines this year. I'm excited. This really, as if I wasn't excited enough, this really energizes me to see, man, just how good are they,
Right. Yep, exactly. So we'll get into that, but and again, to tease, really, really intriguing matchup here in week 2 for Morrison.
Yep, absolutely. Well, before we jump into our week 1 results and looking ahead at week 2, of course, we thank our sponsor at Breedlove Sporting Goods. Breedlove's is Western Illinois' premier sporting goods store for uniforms, apparel, equipment, awards, and online team stores. They provide the same sporting goods services that the big nationwide companies do, but with a faster turnaround, and their uniform pricing is a fraction of what you're probably used to. They offer name brands such as Adidas, Under Armour, Nike, and are extremely responsive with any inquiries. With a primary focus on the western side of the state of Illinois, Breedlove Sporting Goods is the fastest way to outfit your team. Check them out on Facebook or at breedlovesports.com, or contact Cal Breedlove directly. Email him at calbreedlove@gmail.com. All right, Mitch, we're getting into week 1, the Western Big Six. We'll start with LaSalle Peru knocking off United Township 34-14. We talked a little bit about LP. The Cavaliers had a new look offense this year, and we really weren't. That's a question mark. Going into week 1, you really don't have a lot of film on them. They got some new personnel. We really didn't know what to expect. But man, they looked good. They looked ready to go in week 1 with this new offense. They had racked up 466 total yards, 307 on the ground. It was a run triple option kind of attack in years past. Now it's more of a run heavy coming out of the shotgun. The Cavaliers' Brady Romagnoli finished with 23 carries, 172 yards, 7.5 yards per carry, 2 rushing touchdowns. So, credit to this Cavalier team. They came out and, we had some questions about how ready they'd be. They looked ready. They looked ready to go. And on the United Township side of things, it was another tough game. It was tough week 1.
Yeah, and too, with Friday night, and this was true of a lot of teams, and this might sound repetitive throughout the show. It was really hot on Friday. It was really, really muggy on Friday. You saw a lot of players go down with injuries, with cramping, generally just being uncomfortable. Mixing that all in with your week 1 jitters, mental mistakes, things like that. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. And UT was kind of susceptible to that, but I liked what I saw from UT in this game. Despite the score, they looked like they had more fight than in years past. Certainly you saw that they cut the deficit midway through the third. They had a handful of clutch plays throughout the night on offense, defense, and special teams. But as it has in years past, injury bug kind of crept up on the Panthers here. Certainly, most notably, 3-year starter Matthew Kelly goes down. He was on defense at the time. Awkward landing on a tackle, hurt his non-throwing shoulder. Coach Nick Welch, he didn't play the rest of the game. Coach Nick Welch was quoted saying that we don't believe it's something that should be season-ending. That is the good news. We won't speculate on the severity or what the condition is, but based on that quote alone, that's good news. But again, you saw things from UT that you hadn't seen in years past, so that gives me a little bit of confidence that they will be better than what they were last year. They have a great opportunity here in week 2 to get a win, but again, they're going to be a little bit maybe of influx in offense with a new quarterback coming in playing. But for LP to get a win here, their offense did look good. Romagnoli, short little guy, but just really ran the rock pretty well. So, but again, I liked what I saw from UT despite the loss.
Yeah, obviously hoping for the best for Matthew Kelly. We talked a lot about him. He's a piece that United Township wants on the field. So hopefully, precautionary to take him out in that game and try to get him back sooner than later. Ultimately, this feels like another letdown for this Panther team that we're waiting for that that big win. We're waiting for that big moment, and I was hoping this would be kind of that momentum to start the season. It didn't happen, but like you said, they have a chance to win in week 2. We'll talk about that game in a minute when we get into that, but hopefully they can bounce back here, get to 1-1, and then kind of hit that, get that focus and get going. So let's move down the way. Dunlap gets the big win over Galesburg, 53-14. Overall, tough night for the Silver Streaks against a really good Dunlap squad. But Mitch, you liked some of what you saw here from the Silver Streaks, even in kind of a bad loss.
Yeah, I was certainly impressed with Geno Williams. I think that they'll have the opportunity to do some nice things on the offensive side of the ball. Like you said, Dunlap is a really good team. I One highlight that I saw on their end, it was kind of a 50-50 ball thrown into the end zone. A Galesburg defender actually tips the ball, and the Dunlap receiver is on his back, laying on the ground, and it just falls right into his lap.
Oh,
And it was
jeez.
down to one. It was really close to being a touchdown, but breaks like that, what can you do? So tough start for Galesburg, but again, liked what I saw from Geno Williams. They've got a week, an opportunity this week to get a win, I think. So again, a week one result that I'm not going to take a lot of stock in, but I do want to see a little bit more production from the Silver Streaks in week two.
Yeah, they have a chance to grab a win in week 2 as well. We'll talk about that in a second. Let's get into Geneseo gets the 56-0 win over Chicago Comer. This is the third consecutive year the Green Machine have blown out the Catamounts. AJ Weller in complete control of this offense. He scored through the air and on the ground, including a 67-yard read option keeper. The three-headed monster, Weller, Luke Johnson, Jerron Neal, all found the end zone. But Mitch, it was the offensive line getting some shout out from Coach Big Pete.
Yeah, the deep dish football, what do they call it? The Hogs of the Night
Yeah.
for that offensive line. So that's a prestigious award if I've ever heard one. So yeah, you said it best. AJ Weller, the score had great highlights of this game. Shout out Dan Pearson for shooting these. They just looked really good. And I know that again, like you said, this is the third straight year that they've kind of done this against Comer Noble, but still, you can tell that Geneseo is super athletic. Luke Johnson is a problem to defend. So, and in the end, a week one victory, pretty much the norm for Geneseo. They've won 50. This is a stockpile gold, by the way, our first of the night.
Okay.
That Geneseo has won 57 of their last 61 season openers, including 35-3 in home openers.
That is remarkable. One, that he knows that stat, and also that Geneseo has put up that kind of record. That's incredible. Right. So
ring that bell.
That's right. That's exactly right. Get that victory bell ringing in Geneseo.
Did you see they were all white at home?
Oh wow. Okay. No.
Yeah, I don't know if that's because Comer Noble only has one set of jerseys. Again, I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe this is just something Geneseo wanted to do. I have no idea. But yeah, all white at home. It was a cool look.
There you go. Yeah, they've started doing all white, obviously on the road. The past couple years, I think, has kind of been a new look for them. But all right, very cool.
Do they ever go yellow lid, green top, white pant at home?
I don't know that I've ever seen that. No.
I don't think I would want to. I'm just curious.
Okay, there you go.
It might look okay, but Geneseo's uniform is just so classic. I don't want to screw it up. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I want to say at one time back in the 90s, and Dan Pearson would be the authority on this, I think for a little while, a couple years, they had green pants that they would wear once in a while. So they would be yellow lid and then green on green.
Sounds familiar.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It wasn't very long, but because traditionally they've always had the yellow pants. Yeah. But Geneseo, give them credit. They keep very consistent when it comes to the striping and obviously the uniform combo. It's they were one of our clear cut favorites in the uniform matchups back when we did those.
Well, and just kind of circling back to Geneseo as a whole, this was a team that we talked about maybe being a dark horse in the conference, right? This was a perfect start for them.
Yep.
Grays Lake Central next week, which I can't remember if they lost close or won close last year. I think I don't want to say, but I do think that's a winnable game for them too, to be 2-0 heading into Western Big Six play.
Yeah, I completely agree. So speaking of another team that we think is, potentially up there, a dark horse to win the conference, Moline Maroons. They're the defending conference champions. They get the win on the road at Glenbard North, 17-12, a fourth quarter comeback win for the Maroons. They knock off Glenbard North. They trailed 12-10 in the fourth quarter. The Maroons went to the air. Drew Phelps finds Xander Ely for a 20-yard touchdown to take the lead in the fourth quarter. Mitch, I went back and watched a little bit of this replay on NFHS, and man, I love the play call. So they had really been really tight. We're not spreading out any wide receivers. They were just pounding the ball, right? Just a lot of ground and pound, getting yardage through, using their running backs. And then they get into this situation where they have the ball on the 20-yard line. They put Xander Ely out as a wide receiver. He's got a one-on-one matchup. And Drew Phelps, hey, do the kids say drops a dime? Is that the phrase?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. We're cool. We're hip. Drew Phelps drops the perfect pass to Xander Ely in one-on-one coverage. It just felt like the perfect play call. Like they had really been going on the ground, and then they just stretch him out far enough to kind of catch him off guard. Great play call, great execution. That gives them the lead, and they hold on to it, 17-12.
Yeah, Glenbard got the ball back late in this game, but the Maroon defense that we talked about a lot and we're high on, were able to force a turnover on downs with under 3 to play, and Molina was able to run out the clock there. But that defensive unit was led by James Soles, who had 16 total tackles, one of 3 Maroon defenders who finished in double-digit tackles, alongside Aiden Vercautren and Xander Ely, as mentioned. So I hope I pronounced Aiden your last name correctly. So as tight as this game was, you want a defensive unit that can keep your opponent out of the end zone. This unit definitely did that on Friday.
Yeah, great effort on both sides of the ball. You look at Pablo Perez led the rushing attack with 111 yards on 20 carries. Colin Fredrickson had 54 yards and a first half touchdown. How about this stat, Mitch? Moline 11-1 in their last 12 road games. That's a good program if you're winning that many games on the road. That's a sign of a great program.
Would that one be the playoff loss last year that was like 4 overtimes?
I would guess so. Yeah.
So, you're talking about almost 12 straight road wins for Moline. So,
yep.
Yeah, really, really impressive. And Coach Morrissey, we talked to him a little bit after the game on Saturday. He said it was a very, very physical game with Glenbard. They were very size-wise. Glenbard was a big team, but it speaks to the character of this Maroon team, this 2023 Maroon team, to be able to kind of overcome being down a couple times in the game, hanging in there in the fourth quarter. Wants to see a little bit more protection of the football. I think that's going to be a repeated line probably throughout this episode too.
Yeah.
And maybe to shore up some things on defense, but nonetheless, a great win here for Moline. We talked about how their start of the year is pretty tough. They had this game against Glenbard. They played Bennett this week. So great start here for Moline. A needed win that, again, at the end of the year could come back as one that you think, thank goodness we won that one.
Yep. Well, speaking of great starts, how about Quincy in the crosstown rivalry against Quincy Notre Dame? They get the win 52-13. Mitch, stop me if you've heard this before. Braden Little completed 14 of 21 passes, 303 yards, 5 touchdowns. That's a candidate for our Matthewson's Mini Helmets Player of the Week.
Yeah, no kidding. I mean, that's and again, I he's one that's almost like we expect those type of numbers from. But I was able to watch this game and watch the Quincy offense, and it's everything that we advertised. It's Braden Little running the show. It's Jarius Rice at running back. It's 4 receivers that you have to somehow defend week in and week out. This week was led by Tycho Hammers, who had 5 catches for 164 yards. You're going to see these type of stats every single week from Quincy until a defense can somehow figure out how to shut that down. Reading Shuck's recap of this one, he was really big on highlighting Rico Clay, who had 2 interceptions. One was a pick 6. One it's either he tripped or got tackled at the 5. So he almost had 2 pick 6s in this game. So this was a complete win for Quincy in a rivalry game. Certainly they're a bigger school than Quincy Notre Dame. Typically it doesn't matter in a rivalry game like this, but every unit for the Blue Devils was clicking exactly what they needed to do to live up to the expectations that we have for them this year.
Yeah, we talked about it on the Instant Reacts podcast, which I encourage everyone to go out and listen to that. It's in our podcast feed, it's in our archives. We record that every week on Friday night after the game action is over. Some weeks we'll be at the Score. I'll be talking to the guys and gal Camille from the Score. Some weeks, Mitch, maybe you and Kyle can jump on with me and we can do an Instant Reacts. We'll kind of keep it rotating. But anyway, we talked about it on the Instant Reacts that this Quincy Notre Dame team is still I think it's still going to be a good football team. They're going to end the season with a good record. Now, Mitch, my question to you is maybe can we adopt Quincy Notre Dame, kind of follow them throughout the year? Just every week, just occasionally check in, see their score, see how they did. If we get some info, that's great.
Yeah, I think if we don't do that, they're going to sneak up on us in come playoff time. So I think it would be wise to kind of keep tabs on them, right? We'll need some help from Shuck, and all the guys down there in the Quincy area. But I think their quarterback play is really good. Again, when you're going up against a much bigger school and a team like Quincy, who is as good as they are, that it doesn't speak anything to how Quincy Notre Dame is going to be this year. So yeah, I think that's a great idea that we keep tabs on them from a distance.
Yeah, we'll just kind of see, week to week, see how they're doing. We'll check in. So
yeah,
moving down the way, Minooka gets the 42-7 win over Rock Island. A tough start for the Fritz Deadone era for the Rocks. They fumble on the first play of the game, recovered by Minooka. I mean, Minooka's a playoff team last season. They've been really good for the past several seasons. They quickly turned it into a 6-0 advantage there. Then it was 19-7 at halftime. It just kind of got away from the Rocks. The Rocks' one lone score, Amari Overton touchdown catch from Javian Clark-Pugh. So you like that connection has been established, but just kind of a rough start for the Rocks. It's a tough test, and it was a tough night.
Yeah, and unfortunately for Rock Island, they kind of have to get this loss out of their system because now they got Dunlop coming in week 2. Or excuse me, they go to the road to Dunlop here in week 2. So not an easy start for Coach Fritz here, but again, week 1, Minooka is a very, very good team. We know that Rock Island's kind of going through some scheme changes. So how quickly, though, can they kind of get up to speed with all that remains the question.
Yep. Let's keep moving down. The last game we have to cover in the Western Big Six from week 1, Metamora went on the road. This is a game that we felt like maybe was the most intriguing, game of the week for the Western Big Six. Metamora gets the home win over Sterling, 28-17. Mitch, you found this stat from the Peoria Journal-Star. Give us this number.
Yeah. So before I go there, this was also a rematch of, I think it was either regional or sectional. And again, I'm going to screw it up. It was either a regional or a sectional, either a semifinal or a final, something like that, from basketball.
It was a game.
Metamora was a top-ranked team in, I think they're in 3A in basketball.
Okay.
And JP Schilling had 32 points in the game, and I think Metamora won by 3. So this I when I was looking for some research on Metamora, I found that these two had a classic of a basketball game last year. But
okay,
this is a football podcast. So moving forward, yes. So from the Peoria Journal-Star, I saw that according to Metamora's longtime statistician Alex Staub, this is the Redbirds' first win over a state-ranked team in 2,484 days. Which is
wow.
I'm not good at math. 8 years, I guess.
I was gonna ask how if we had to figure out how many years that is, but yeah, wow. I mean, Metamora is a program that I think I hold in pretty high regard. I think everybody does it. That one kind of surprises me.
Yeah, brand new field there in Metamora too. It looked really, really nice from the video that I saw.
Yeah, turf down in Metamora. They've always had grass traditionally, so. Yeah. I talked a little bit to Coach Schlemmer over the weekend. He gave a lot of credit to Metamora for playing a great game, but he mentioned that on top of this Sterling team maybe not having as much experience returning as they've had in past years, he said they were dealing with some injuries throughout the week, and then a couple more injuries on Friday night that kind of kept some guys out of the lineup. Not sure how significant they are, how long-term. he didn't make it seem like they were, massive, like season-long type injuries, but little things that were keeping guys out. He does, Coach Schlemmer feels like as the weeks progress, this team will get better. This Sterling team will get better. They have a tough test in week 2, though. I mean, they don't have much time to, to sit and look back at this one. They got to focus on Wheaton St. Francis now.
Yeah, it looked like from the little bit I saw from this game that Golden Warrior defensive unit was on the field a lot on a hot night. Injuries might have been messing with depth a little bit too. So, hopefully that unit and the team in general just recovers from this game. Like you said, it's a tough one here with Wheaton St. Francis. So, but I will take Coach Schlemmer's words that he thinks they're going to improve. I'd absolutely believe that with the history that we've always covered with Sterling.
Yep. And we do have a little clarity before we wrap up Sterling. We do have a little clarity on Joseph Holcomb is going to be the quarterback for the most part. I believe he'll be at quarterback. And then Lettergerber will be more of a running back. And then you have Andre Claver. I asked where he fits in, and Coach Schlemmer said he'll be everywhere. So that's always a nice athlete to have.
I saw a couple of his runs in the little bit that I saw this game. But yeah, I did notice they were playing Holcomb at quarterback. So we were expecting not that. So I don't know when that change came through, but Holcomb apparently ended up winning that 3-man race.
Yep. Well, let's move into the Western Big Six matchups in week 2. We mentioned a few of them. United Township will be hosting Chicago Noble Muchin. Galesburg will be on the road at Bartonville Limestone. Geneseo will be taking on Grayslake Central. Moline will be playing Bennett Academy. Quincy will go on the road to Alton. Rock Island will be at Dunlap, and Sterling will be hosting Wheaton St. Francis. So again, the Western Big Six has a few weeks of non-conference games. What's a matchup here that you look at?
I think Moline intrigues me the most, right?
Yep.
Can they ride the momentum against a good Bennett Academy team to pick up a very crucial second win of the season? But again, looking at teams like UT Galesburg, Rock Island, Sterling, where is your improvement from week 1 to week 2? I really want to see that. I think there's winnable games here, certainly with UT. I don't know much about Bartonville Limestone, but again, how good can Sterling and Rock Island recover from tough losses when they have tough teams coming in week 2?
Yeah, well, you mentioned, so Bartonville Limestone lost to Mount Zion in week 1, 42-6. Last year, Limestone was 0-9. So there's an opportunity here. I believe in Galesburg's skill positions. I think it is a matter of, can they get enough protection? Do they have enough around those guys to really make something happen? This seems like an opportunity here in week 2 for Galesburg. Also, like you mentioned, go ahead.
And these are the games too. If from our perspective anyway, that they're winnable, right? I want to see teams not making mental mistakes, right? If it's an easier opponent, I want to see teams that aren't having to waste timeouts, aren't having penalties on the line, aren't having false starts, things like that. The little things that can add up so quickly in bigger games. Want to see those types of things showing up. And I'm sure the coaches would echo that same type of sentiment. So this is your opportunity, right? Before you get into Western Big Six play to fix any sort of small mistakes that you might have made in week 1.
Yep. That's a great point. I'm interested to see how that Moline Bennett Academy game plays out. I mean, man, Rock Island, that's tough. They go on the road to Minooka. Now they go on the road to Dunlap. 2 programs that seem really good, and you got to travel to their place. That's a tough start to the season. See if Rock Island can get any positive momentum, steal a win at Dunlap. Sterling will be back at home. That's a tough Wheaton St. Francis team. So they, I'm sure that coaching staff and those players are, trying to continually work to improve, and hopefully they're back to a little more full strength. See if they can get moving in the right direction. Like John Schlemmer mentioned, he feels like, they'll get going. They'll get better throughout the season. Can they make big steps this week against a really good team? And that Grayslake Central game against Geneseo, like you said when we were talking about them in the week 1 recap, man, that would be huge for Geneseo to go 2-0, to be looking at, a 2-0 start as they look down the way into eventually, another week or two from Western Big Six play.
Yeah, because that would lead into the Moline game in week 3, and I think that was
Yep.
a game that we all talked about on the Western Big Six preview as who would be. I think we said second in the conference this year behind Quincy. So
Yeah.
if it shakes out that way, but yeah, just again adding to the Moline. Can you continue the momentum because you got Geneseo coming into town? That one's in Moline in week 3. So yeah, looking for both of those teams to play well this week because that week 3 matchup is pivotal.
Yep. Well, Mitch, before we move into the Three Rivers Athletic Conference, let's give a quick shout out to QCSportsNet.com. You can find them at QCSportsNet on X or on Twitter, however you want to call it. They'll be doing live. There you go. They will be doing live play-by-play. You can stream it on QCSportsNet.com. They'll have the Moline Bennett Academy game. They'll also have Rock Island at Dunlap, and they'll have United Township at Chicago Mutuin. They do a great job of giving local coverage, local live stream broadcasts to our Western Big Six teams. So I encourage anyone to go out and check those out. We should mention Chicago Mutuin and United Township will be on Saturday at 12:45 for that broadcast. The other two will be Friday night at 7:15. So really great job they do. We want to make sure to support the games that they're covering. So Mitch, are we ready? Are we ready for the Three Rivers Athletic Conference?
Yeah.
Well,
talk about here.
Yeah, exactly. If we're talking Three Rivers, man, I want to start with Morrison Mendota. 54-0. Morrison, all Mustangs all the time on Friday night. They led 34-0 after the first half. Mitch, I think you were watching a little bit of this game, and it's your alma mater. You're a proud Morrison Mustang. I'll let you take this one.
Yeah, I did. I watched a lot of this. The first half anyway, because truth be told, there wasn't much to see after that. But Morrison scored on the very first play from scrimmage, and and again, you talked about it in your viewpoints. We knew going into this team had speed. We knew that this team had state track medalists on this team. 431 yards on 33 rushes in this game. That's 13 yards a clip. They were 1 of 1 passing for a 67-yard touchdown.
Yeah, there you go.
So 498 yards of total offense in essentially the first 3 quarters. And it was the names that we expected. Brady Anderson, 4 rushes for 125 yards and 2 TDs. Carson Strating, who the broadcast team kept calling Sauce, so that must be a nickname.
Okay, good. That's
Trading.
Great intel. Great stuff.
Yeah. 110 yards on 6 carries with a TD. Chase Newman had 51. He had a 30-yard rushing TD and also had a 47-yard pick 6. That was in the first quarter. So, yeah, for Coach Nate Vandermine in his first game, this is a Mendota team that we thought was going to put up points. I mean, they put up a lot of points last year. We knew that their defense was live.
Well, that was what I was just going to say. Yeah.
They were in a lot of shootouts last year. So it does surprise me that Morrison scored so easily. I think I was more surprised that Morrison's defense didn't let Mendota do a thing.
Maybe that's the most impressive thing here is we talk so much about the 54-0 score, but maybe it's the Morrison defense, the speed on the defensive side of the ball that was able to really control and shut down this Mendota offense. I maybe that's what stands out to me most here when you walk away with this one.
Yeah, if you had watched the game, it just again they just didn't let Casey Randolph get into any sort of rhythm. None of their receivers, I don't know, I don't even have their stats, but I can tell you from memory they won't look that great. So again, I think, and we'll talk about this more here in a little bit. We'll learn more about Morrison in week 2, but yeah, we know what they're capable of now, and it probably exceeds what we thought. We knew what they had. but now we can see what they can do. So really looking forward to Morrison this year. I had them at, I think I said 6-3. Still feel pretty good about that with their schedule, maybe even a 7-2 type of year. But if they play like this, they could be creeping into 8 type of win. So not to get ahead of, not to put the cart in front of the Mustang here, but I really liked what I saw from Morrison. Not from a completely unbiased opinion. I really liked what I saw from Morrison here on Friday.
Do you have any like text thread with old like football buddies about Morrison here? Is there talk? Is there excitement?
No, I don't. We'd have to talk to our friends in Morrison just that are more there.
Yeah.
I'll tell you, the EM Bud Cole Field looks great. They've got new lights there. They got new bleachers there, so the stadium looked really good. So maybe it was a look good, feel good type of thing for the Mustangs there on Friday. So it was all working. It was all clicking on the field that night.
New lights at Morrison really excites me because I'll be honest, shooting video at Bud Cole Field over the years, it's been weird lighting and it's always been kind of dark, and it's to get real technical, it's been hard to get a good white balance, to get a good, a good flat line of what color needs to be what color, so the reds look red and the blues look blue and vice versa. Right. Like, it's always been tough. So new lighting excites me out there. I'll say that.
Yeah. Their PA system too, which is probably the first time they've had a good PA system. They didn't have one when I was there. So
okay.
They've got it all going there in Morrison. So great win here for the Mustangs. We'll get into week 2 in a minute, but again, looking forward to them going forward.
All right, let's get into Bureau Valley gets the 26-7 win over Erie Prophetstown. The Storm pick up their first win on the road. They pull away in the second half of this one after being tied at halftime. Elijah Endress, a name we talked about in the preseason, 3 touchdowns on the night. Bryce Helms showed some real flashes at quarterback. He scored through the air and on the ground. Mitch, were you able to get some eyes on this one? Did you watch a little bit of this one on Friday?
Yeah, I was able to watch. Unfortunately, it was the first half. So as you just said, it was tied at halftime. So a bit of a battle there in the first half before BV really pulled away with a couple scores in the second. But like you mentioned, Elijah Endress, huge night for them. Bryce Helms, a guy that you've been high on going into his second season there with the Storm. So this was a good win. We were anticipating this to be a good game that we thought would kind of set the tone for either team. We knew that BV had players coming back. We knew the EP maybe going through some changes with new coaching, but for BV to step on the field, get this win, great for them moving forward.
Yeah. And on the flip side, Erie Prophetstown showed some flashes, right? Jeremiah Kochaver had good command of the offense. He led a 92-yard scoring drive and later had an 84-yard touchdown pass that was called back. So unfortunately, it didn't count for anything, but at least it was something.
And I think that was in the second quarter. So you're talking about something that could have flipped the script of the game.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, again, the EP showed that they have those type of playmakers there, that they can have some offense. So, but we're excited about what BV can do this year. So hopefully EP can move forward from this. And for BV, now that you've won one, right? Can you get your second one? Who do they play this week? We'll talk about it in a minute, but BV plays Monmouth Roseville, a team coming off of a loss. So can BV continue to make incremental improvements from last year? This was a good first start.
Yep, absolutely. Another good game in the Three Rivers in week 1. Orion gets the 20-14 win over Spring Valley Hall. Orion moves to 1-0 for the 8th time in the last 9 years. And that adds to a perfect all-time record against Spring Valley Hall. They're 8-0 now. They've never lost to Hall.
Yeah.
So good start for the Chargers.
Yeah. Again, a game that we talked about, we were intrigued by for various reasons. We wanted to see what Cale Filler would look like in his second season at the helm. We wanted to see what Hall would look like in the post-Mac Rusetich era. And this was a great game. I caught some of this game on NFHS. I saw it was a Hall touchdown by Braden Curran. It was a 56-yard touchdown right down the sideline. A fast guy, so maybe they have a new Rusetich type of player in him. But
you might say maybe it's the return of the Mac.
Oh, that's a good one. How many kids listening to this show know what song that is?
Have any idea what that is? That's
It would be my walk. If I was a baseball player, that'd be my walk-up song.
there you
But
go. Okay.
uh, so Kale had a good night. They got on the board first. He connected with Jake Brambidge for a 22-yard touchdown, got him up to 7-0. That was when Hall responded with their long touchdown pass. But the teams kind of went back and forth there in the second quarter. Filler and Bainbridge connected again in the second quarter. On the night, Kale had 150 yards passing and 2 touchdowns, both to Bainbridge. Bainbridge had 100 yards receiving. So
Yeah.
this was a great start for Orion, a great week 1 win. Again, nothing that they're not used to winning the week 1 for the 8th time in the last 9 years. But again, we are intrigued by this game. Great win for Orion.
Yeah, well, I think we said kind of going into this one that this was one of those, I call them X Factor games, right? It's maybe a toss-up game. Hall, Orion was at home, so I think that favored them, and they come away with the win here, and I think it goes a long way in them making that march back to the playoffs. This is an Orion team that's been to the playoffs a lot over the years, and they kind of fell off a little bit. And they've had some years, the last couple, where they haven't made the playoffs. This is a big step in the right direction. And I'm interested. I'm intrigued by the Filler to Bainbridge connection there. They've established themselves really well. Talking to Chip Filler over the weekend, he mentioned that, Kale Filler as a sophomore, he's the straw that stirs the drink, right, on the offense for Orion. So as he goes, when he's making plays, this offense is rolling. So this is a good start for them. Caden Edmonds was able to punch one in from 2 yards out. That was after a scoreless third quarter. That would be the only touchdown in the second half. So good to see them being able to punch one in on the ground there with Edmonds, a name I'm sure we'll talk about a lot this year. Overall, head coach Chip Filler likes what he saw in week 1, says, like a lot of teams, they need to improve their discipline and maybe their toughness a little bit. But overall, if you're getting a win in week 1, it's a close game, you're coming away with a win, that's a great start.
Yeah, and on the flip side for Hall, Gianni Guarini played really well as the new quarterback for Hall. He scored the second touchdown of the night for Hall. It was a 15-yard QB keeper. That put them ahead at the break. And Coach Tiemann said he thought his team did a good job defensively. This is a good Orion offense. So we thought that Hall's defense was going to be better this year. I think they will be, despite the loss. It was indicative of that in week 1, but wants to clean up the mental mistakes that they had. A lot of false starts. This is how Orion won. I think Hall had the ball inside the 23 times and didn't score.
Wow.
So
yeah.
A big credit to Orion's defense. The war pig this week was Nolan Buchan. Buchan.
Buchan, yeah. Yep.
Buchan, sorry if I'm butchering that name, but junior safety linebacker, 10 tackles, 2 tackles for loss. So again, when your opponent is inside the red zone 3 times and they don't score, you're going to win a lot of ball games that way. So we talk a lot about Filler and Bainbridge, but shout out to this Charger defensive unit for keeping Hall out of the end zone in the second half.
Well, how about we had the Hogs in Geneseo? Now we got the War Pig in Orion. I love it. So yeah. Shout out to Nolan having a huge game and a huge impact, to grab this win.
What other swine awards can we figure out here this week?
Yeah. All right. Let's keep going here. Princeton gets the 40-0 win over Monmouth Roseville. This Princeton team of 2023, kind of looks same old for what we've seen year in and year out. They shut out the Titans, like we said, 40-0. Mitch, you mentioned him off the top of the show. Sophomore Casey Etheridge, outstanding debut, rushing for 234 yards, 4 scores on pace to pace the Tigers. I mean, what a way to burst on the scene here.
Yeah, and this was some good info from the post-game interview and write-up from Kevin Hieronymus that Coach Pearson said he always knew what they had in Etheridge, but other teams didn't know. Certainly sophomore, they hadn't seen him on film yet. And Etheridge gave the credit to his offensive line, Bennett Williams, the whole crew there for that production. New Tiger quarterback Will Lott had 2 touchdown passes. So, you know, again, it's the Princeton of old. What's new is old, right? Defensively, their 4th straight road shutout. They moved to 18-3 in their last 21 games on the road. So, you know, outstanding game from Princeton here. Certainly not the way that Monmouth Rosa wanted to start. There will be plenty of opportunities now that Princeton is off the schedule for them to play well and again get some wins on their schedule. I think they will get a handful of wins this season. So, but to have a new weapon in Princeton, Casey Etheridge, exciting to see, and exciting to see what he can do this year behind that offensive line that he credited.
Yeah, very exciting to see what he can do the rest of the year. But Mitch, before we get into the rest of the year, we got to make some history here on the podcast. It's the big announcement. It's time. We are here to congratulate Casey Etheridge. He is our first ever Mathewson's Mini Helmets Player of the Week on View from the West. So congratulations to Casey. You got a View from the West mini helmet with your name, your team, your stats on its way to Princeton. Mitch, if a team, a player, anybody is looking for the perfect gift for your high school football player, check out Mathewson's Mini Helmets. They offer totally custom mini helmets and decals for your school. You can find them on Facebook or on Twitter. We love this partnership. It's exciting, and Casey has certainly earned it here in week 1.
Yeah, this will be a lot of fun. I talked to Cody this week for a little bit of a side project that I'm working on with our kids' school here. So to see what this helmet's going to look like, it's going to be awesome. It's going to a really great recipient here in Casey Etheridge for his performance. So yeah, really looking forward to doing this promotion all season.
Yep, absolutely. All right. Well, couple more games here, 3 more games here in the Three Rivers. Let's talk Newman and Rock Ridge. Mitch, this was a game I was at for a majority of it. Newman gets the 12-7 win over Rock Ridge. Now, Mitch, I say I was there, but yet Newman scored twice, and I didn't see either one of them. So,
yep.
You know, like I said, kind of a clunky week 1 for me, but I'll work on it. I'll get over it. And Mitch, 2 great defenses on display here. That's the takeaway from this game. Overall, like I said, it was a bizarre game. Newman scores in the first minute of the game, and they don't score again until the last 5 seconds of the game, and they come away with a 12-7 win. I don't know how much of this one you saw, but it was kind of wild.
Yeah, I didn't see a lot of it, but I did connect with head coach Mike LeMay on Saturday. We've talked about it before. Him and I competed against one another in high school at Morrison and Newman. We went to Ambrose together where he played football. So it was great to connect with him and really just talk shop. But he couldn't have been more ecstatic. And he did send me a video that I will put out to the masses.
I kind of want to put it out there, though.
Yeah, I can't remember if Coach LeMay played baseball or not. But if he didn't, you wouldn't be able to tell because on that pick 6, and I didn't know this at the time the first time I saw this video. If you certainly you're watching the action on the field, but out of your periphery you can see a coach just sprinting alongside, and at the last second just kind of gets his feet out from underneath him and takes a spill. And my verbatim text was, "I hope that's not you." And he said, "It is." So again, you'd love to see that type of excitement. It's a big play in a big game in week 1. But overall, Coach LeMay was ecstatic with his team's effort. We talked about we wanted to see Newman be more consistent on offense. They've got a sophomore quarterback in Evan Bushman this year that really did a lot of good things on Friday. And Coach LeMay talked about how really the only thing this offense didn't do was score. He was happy with how they moved the ball. They just couldn't get it into the end zone. So certainly you want to be able to finish those drives, but it's also an encouraging start for this Newman offense. So, overall, a great program win for Newman, who has a trophy cases of huge wins. But for what Newman is trying to do in Mike LeMay's second season to come up with the upset on paper, against a really, really good Rockridge team. This was an excellent start.
Yeah, make sure we get his name in there. Maybe you already said it, but Newman's Brady Grennan came up with the pick six. And Mitch, I got to tell you, after you sent me the video, I showed my kids tonight the video, and they thought Coach LeMay's performance was hysterical. They could not stop laughing at the coach taking a spill on the sideline. So sorry, Coach, but they got a big thrill out of it.
They got a really good baseball team there at Newman. Maybe the secret has been Coach LeMay teaching how to slide. I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. He recovered well. He was up. He was ready to go.
Oh, yeah.
So yeah. But so it was interesting because, like you said, sophomore Evan Bushman for Newman and freshman quarterback Cullen Schweigen for Rockridge. So two young quarterbacks going up against two really good defenses. That's what kind of stood out to me in this one. Rockridge, like Newman for a majority of the game, they didn't have the big explosive play. They had a few. Newman was here or there. Like you said, they were moving the ball a little bit. They couldn't punch it into the end zone. Rockridge could never really get consistently moving on offense, but there were flashes, right? You saw a huge touchdown pass. Schweigen caught Landon Wheatley in the second quarter. That was a great pitch and catch. They also connected on another big first down play. So I like that connection there. But overall, I think Rockridge is still trying to find their identity on offense. But ultimately on defense, they really looked good. That defense will carry them a long way this season. And obviously the same for Newman. We saw Newman's defense a year ago. That'll carry them as well.
I think what speaks to Newman's improvements on offense too is that they got the ball. They were pinned on like the 8-yard line on this final drive.
Yeah.
I don't recall how much time was left when they got it, but
it was only a couple minutes, 2 or 3 minutes, something like that.
Okay. And I know that drive included a fourth down pickup. So this Newman team just marched down the field in the absolute best time, and ended up getting that touchdown pass. It was Evan Bushman connected with senior wide receiver Isaiah Williams. It was a 3-yard touchdown pass with 5 seconds left to secure this game. So a great game. Two teams that I think we're going to be talking about a lot moving forward. Again, we talked up Rockridge a lot, and I think rightfully so. I think Newman said, "Hey, we're here too." I think both teams will have great defensive units, and we'll see if both teams can again. Newman scored on a pick six and scored 1 offensive touchdown. So can they build upon that? Coach LeMay, again, liked what he saw from the offensive unit. Now can they expand on that, score more, so they're not in this situation all that much? But again, that defensive unit for them is going to keep them in a lot of ball games and put them in a position to win.
Yeah. Rockridge is a team, before we wrap up, Rockridge was a team that we were high on this year, and it'll be interesting to see kind of where they go from here. Obviously, Coach Sam Graves knows that, they need to find a consistent offense to pair up with that defense. I think they'll get there. I think they have plenty of pieces. They'll get there, but there's some improvement that needs to be done. They don't have much rest this week. They go on the road to a tough test. We'll talk about that in a minute.
Yeah. Speaking of improvement, the helmets in Rockridge.
Okay, yeah. The whole look. The whole look. The new Rockridge has a completely new look this year. Yeah, talk about it.
Yeah, okay, I didn't see it. So you were there. You have to. I've seen the helmet. I didn't see the uniform and the pants. So please give the listeners a visual here.
So I was told we saw the helmet, and it's a matte gray helmet with maroon face mask, and it's got Rockets script on it. But what's really interesting about the uniform is I believe it was Sam Graves who we were talking to during the week, who had tweeted out the helmet picture and then said that he was inspired by Mike Leach, former head coach Mike Leach at Mississippi State, who passed away this past offseason. Very tragic, very sad situation there. But he was always inspired by Mike Leach. So we wanted to have uniforms that looked like Mississippi State. So Mitch, if you're familiar with Mississippi State's, their chest logo has that kind of like Mississippi with the state in kind of like a ribbon.
Yeah.
That's what that Rock Ridge has that now. So it says Rock Ridge on top with the Rockets in the ribbon area. And then it's kind of the striping and the shoulders look the same as, Mississippi State. So it's a cool look, and the gray and the maroon all matches well. It's a good look.
Yeah. Now, privately, we can say this now. We thought that Rock Ridge needed a refresh in the uniform department. So
Yeah.
Good to see that they went this route. Looking forward to seeing it on the field, because again, I didn't see a lot of it. And so you saw the details up front.
Yeah. Look, it looks good with the gray and the maroon. It's a good, and I like the homage to Mississippi State. It's cool. It's a unique look. So,
Great.
All right, Mitch. Couple more games in the Three Rivers. This was a good one. This was a really good game between, again, two good football teams. Kewanee gets the win 28-21 over Sherrard. Brady Clark, quarterback for Kewanee, a name we talked about leading into the season, scored a pair of touchdowns on the ground as they get their first win, a road win, with new head coach Matthew Taylor. Alex Duarte also found the end zone, as did Ben Taylor. So good start for Kewanee. I still think there's a lot of potential here with this Sherrard team. Matt Randazzo was there covering the game for WQAD. He was really impressed with what he saw from both teams. And maybe some differences. Kewanee was a little bit bigger. Sherrard looked, as we've talked about, athletic. They had a lot of speed, a lot of athleticism. I think both teams will win with those recipes. This one just went the way of Kewanee.
Yeah, so, and certainly that's an intriguing game that we'll get into. That Sherrard Newman game. I'm going to be intrigued to see how both teams do in week 2. But yeah, I was going to mention what you just said about what Dazzo's comments were about both of these teams looking completely different than they did last year. So Brady Clark, a name that we've talked about a lot. Again, coming up clutch with a couple of scores. So good win for Kewanee here. And again, I think both teams are really going to be knocking on the door of the playoffs here. So good matchup here in week 1. And this one goes to Kewanee.
Yeah. Couple quick uniform notes from this game as well, Mitch. So Sherrard has new helmets this season. They've switched from the Block S to the Tiger Paw. So they still have the the purple matte helmet. Yep. They had the Block S in years past. They now go with the Tiger Paw on both sides. Looks good. Really pops on the helmet. Looks good. I believe they have new jerseys and pants to go with it. It all looks good. On the flip side, Kewanee also has a new helmet look, similar to what they've had in the past. You remember, they kind of had the unique look in the past couple years with the Block K that was on the back of the helmet. Everything else on the helmet was blank, a black helmet with the orange K on the back, similar to what like Oregon does with the O.
Yeah.
Well, they've updated that. They've moved the K now to the right side of the helmet with the left side blank. Now, if I'm being honest, I want to see that K on both sides of the helmet, I think.
Yeah, if you're gonna change it, go all the way. I liked. Again, I'm not gonna speak ill to anything with what they're doing, but I think we've talked about in the past. Our preference with helmets is not to do like what the Steelers do, or never to have anything on one side and not the other. So yeah. If you're gonna be unique with it. I liked, because you don't see that very often where they cap it all in the back. I don't know.
I think my thought would be go the logo on both sides, or just keep it in the back, right?
Right.
I like that. I think it was unique having that K in the back. But either way, I will say I do love for Kewanee as a program, keep a black helmet with a black face mask and that orange K that really pops. I do like that look. It is a good solid helmet look. And honestly, they wouldn't go wrong if they put the Boilermaker on there either. I think either way, it's a good look. So, overall, the orange and the black is a good color combo. They do it well. So, anyway, One more game, Mitch. It was Saturday. DuPo goes on the road. They come to Riverdale. They get the 41-0 win. So a tough start for this Rams team that's back for the first time in 2 years in 11-man football. The DuPo was able to take advantage of 6 Riverdale turnovers. So not the ideal start for the Rams. But like I said, I think keep plugging away, keep grinding week in and week out. I hope for the best for Coach Derricks and this Rams crew. It's tough. It's a tough situation to be bouncing back from what they've done. I hope the hardest part, having to sit out, is behind them. Hopefully they can find some positive momentum here somewhere.
Yeah, they're going to have these bumps in the road, but again, they're moving, right? They're not stalled anymore. They're not having a program. So you're going to have games like this probably a lot this season. But again, we'd love to see that the program is back. The kids are back on the field. So we hope that Coach Derricks keeps the spirits high there, and they keep working back to Riverdale teams of old.
Yep, absolutely. All right, here we go. Week 2. Kewanee going up against Erie Prophetstown. Bureau Valley facing Monmouth Roseville. Mendota going up against Orion. Morrison at Princeton. That's an interesting one. Riverdale at Spring Valley Hall. Newman will host Sherrard. And Rock Ridge goes on the road to Ridgeview, Lexington. So, couple games that stand out to me. But man, when you're talking a Three Rivers game, it's a crossover. But man, that Morrison at Princeton game looks really intriguing after what Morrison did in week 1.
Yeah, you've certainly got a team full of speed against a team full of power. And so, I hate to say that I don't think Morrison can hang with Princeton, because I think that they proved that they have a recipe to do so, but I just don't know that Princeton will allow it, right? I just don't know if the holes that Morrison had against Mendota will be there against Princeton. Certainly Morrison can bounce to the outside. They've got the guys that can get to the outside. Princeton's not short on speed either, though. So as you mentioned, this game is a lot more intriguing now that we saw what Morrison can do. It puts a little bit more of a spotlight on that game to see how Princeton can respond, and really to see how Morrison stacks up. Looking forward to that. That'll be on Tiger Central Live. I'll be tuned into that. I'm intrigued by, and I said it earlier, I'm really intrigued by Newman and Sherrard. Can Newman continue to move forward? And as good as Sherrard looked in a loss, can they come back and get a win against a good Newman defensive unit? I think it'll go a long way for both teams. We expected Sherrard to be competing for a playoff spot, Newman as well. So which team can kind of take that next step? So I think from a conference perspective, I think that game probably has the most on the line, I would say.
Yeah, that Sherrard offense, those athletes we've talked about going up against this Newman defense is really interesting. That one is on Saturday. Man, I hope Newman does NFHS. I hope they do a live stream. I would love to watch that game. Otherwise, I think I'm sure Ty Taylor will be there covering the game for WRMJ. So I could tune in. I'll tune in and listen that way, because I really do want to see how that game plays out. The other one, Rock Ridge going on the road to Ridgeview, Lexington. So Ridgeview, Lexington has been a very good program the last few years. They were a semifinalist. Last year, were they a quarterfinalist? So they lost in week 1.
One of those years they lost to Lee Wynn. I think that was 2 years ago.
2 years ago in the semis. Yep.
Yeah. And
last year, I don't know if they might have been in the semis again. I can't remember exactly, but they were in the mix. They were several rounds deep into the playoffs again last year. They lost to Gibson City Melvin Sibley in week 1, 41-13. So they did not have a good showing in week 1. So
I don't know anything about what they bring back. I know in years past they had a really good rushing attack. So I don't know. And in the past couple of years, correct me if I'm wrong, Gibson City hasn't really been that good. So or at least not as good as maybe it used to be. I don't know. But when I saw that result, that was surprising. So I don't know what Ridgeview has this year. But more importantly, we want to see how Rock Ridge responds. We want to see that offense get a little bit more. We know what the defense can do. So I want to see if that offense can find that identity and get something going, get those wheels going, get those rocket boosters going. You know what I'm saying?
I get it.
Just to see, they've got the tools to do it. Freshman quarterback, lots of moving pieces. It was week 1, but you got to get that out of your head and move forward. So it starts right here against a good Ridgeview Lexington team on the road.
Yeah, it's a tough road test, but I do think, I think there's an opportunity here to grab a win on the road and then really head into the meteor season, wiping out that Newman game, forget about it, move along. If you get this one here, then I think it really, sets that momentum a little bit. You got, Bureau Valley looking to grab another win. They go up against Monmouth Roseville. Kewanee, can they keep rolling against Erie Prophetstown? Same thing with Orion. Can they keep rolling against a team in Mendota that really struggled in week 1? So I think there's, some opportunities there as well. All right, well, let's take a quick break, and then we will jump into the Lincoln Land Conference. Of course, we'll then follow that with the NUIC and 8-man football. We'll be right back.
View from the West podcast is brought to you by Brink Sportswear. Brink Sportswear offers totally custom, made-to-order football uniforms that allow coaches and athletic directors to take control of their brands. The uniforms are available in sublimated and tackle twill. They offer free digital mock-ups, free shipping on team orders, and free physical samples before you buy, so you know exactly what you're getting before you spend a dime of your program's money. Uniform sets start at $99 for sublimated and $120 for tackle twill. Head to brinksportswear.com.
The Quad City's first and only fantasy football show, For Fantasy's Sake, has you all covered when it comes to all of your fantasy football needs. The guys come to you live every Sunday morning during the football season from 10 to 11:30. They've got the best analysis, rankings, DFS, and gambling advice between the Rock and Mississippi Rivers. So tune into For Fantasy's Sake every Sunday during the football season from 10 to 11:30 a.m. on Facebook and YouTube.
View from the West is also sponsored by the Cupcake Cartel, gourmet cupcakes that are made to order. Over 40 flavors, including wedding cake, lemon blueberry, strawberry milkshake, snickerdoodle, and Oreo. Perfect for weddings, birthdays, fundraisers, or showers. You can find the Cupcake Cartel on Facebook. We want to thank them for their support. All right, let's jump into the Lincoln Land Conference. We'll start on the large side. We had a lot of good matchups in this side of the division. We'll start with Knoxville and Elmwood Brimfield. Knoxville gets the 26-8 win. Their new season, same look for the Blue Bullets. Knoxville runs their way to a big victory, 41 rushes, nearly 300 yards, 4 touchdowns. They were actually down 8-0 early, but they went to the ground and scored 26 unanswered points. So, Mitch, very impressive week 1 for this Blue Bullets team that, it sounds cliche over the years, but they don't really, rebuild. They just reload.
Yeah, and nothing flashy ever from this Knoxville team. They just get their noses down and just run you straight into the grass. So Nolan McClay, who we've talked about past couple seasons, he paced the effort here on Friday, 167 yards and a pair of scores. Mitchell Parrish, alongside quarterback Will Shreves, both found pay dirt. So, but just as good as they were offensively, this was another stout effort defensively from the Blue Bullets, overcoming that early score. And Jacob Morris was a big part of that, who led the team with 6 tackles, including 2 sacks, and 2 sacks, I should say. So, great win for Knoxville here against Elmwood. Again, doing the same sort of things that we've come to know about Knoxville. So good to see that the script is still the same and they're still winning in ways that they have the past couple of seasons.
Yeah, a good week 1 for them. And I think, like we've talked about, I think this is a team that will be in the mix as you move your way through the season on this Lincoln Land large side of the conference. Another team we've talked about being in the mix, Farmington gets the big win, 39-12 over Illini West. This game was suspended at halftime due to weather. The Farmers were up at that point, 26-0. They finish it out 39-12. A nice win to start this season for head coach Toby Vallis out there in the Farmers.
Yeah, I'm going to use this as a call for help to our friends in Farmington. So If we couldn't find stats on this game, so, and this goes for any coach listening, please always feel free to send us your stats. We'll probably come and try and chase them anyway, but Twitter DMs, email, however is easiest for you. Please get us your stats from the games. We want to promote your team, your players. We've talked in the past, Greg, that sometimes the teams in these two conferences, there might not be as much media coverage there. So we're trying to provide that, right? So if we can get stats from these schools, a lot of schools do a great job of getting us this stuff. So, but Farmington, I'm going to call you out specifically this week. Since you won, if we can start getting stats, that would be great because we want to promote your great team.
Well, there you go. You mentioned you can send us messages on Twitter, or you can email viewfromwestpod@gmail.com. That's an email that I'll see that we'll be able to get your info, get your stats, and talk about them on the podcast. So yes, there you go. Well, Mitch, we also have Hayworth getting the 34-28 win over West Hancock. Head coach Coy Dorothy, so close in this one. They fall by one score after, Coach Dorothy takes over this season, really revamps offense, revamps defense. They fall one score short, but a great effort here from the Titans.
Yeah, and we're going to need to keep an eye on this Titan offense. So Coach Dorothy, mentioned that wants to clean up the fumbles and the penalties that plagued them on Friday. Like you mentioned, one score short here, but quarterback Gavin Grothaus. We'll get clarification.
Grothus. Gavin Grothus.
We'll get clarification on that because I think we're going to be talking about him a lot.
Okay.
29 of 39 for 335 yards and 3 scores. So, I mean, this is a Titan team that is going to put the ball in the air. Nolan Gooding had 8 catches for 122 yards. And it's kind of similar to Quincy, right? You've got a quarterback who can sling it, and you've got a lot of receivers there to catch his passes. Evan Carroll, Gate Scott. Did I type that right? I hope so. And Bryce Varner were all over 65 yards receiving. So a loss here in week 1, but I was impressed here with what this Titan offense can do.
Yeah, that really stuck out to me when you put together the notes on this one. Well, you put together the notes on almost every game, so thank you, Mitch. Yeah. But when I was reading through this one, those numbers really stuck out to me. That will be something to follow along with. And, this was a West Hancock team that had struggled last year. So with this new energy, new excitement.
Yeah, and nonetheless, a great win for Hayworth, though, to beat a good and to overcome offensive production like that. So as much as we talked about West Hancock, and rightfully so, Hayworth does get the win here, and a great win as it was in a close game in week 1.
Yep. Let's move along to another team we think will be in the mix on top of this conference, this division of the conference. Macomb gets the 34-0 win over Lewiston. This game was actually agreed upon to end at halftime when the Bombers had their 34-0 lead. Braden Holdhouse finished with 4 of 6, 126 yards, 2 touchdowns. He had another touchdown on the ground. But Mitch, there was other parts of this Bomber team that really made an impact here.
Yeah, and I think this was 34-0 at the end of the first quarter too. So the Bombers were clicking everywhere. This would have been, I didn't go back to before last year, but this would be at least their 10th straight regular season win. But the special teams unit blocked a punt, returned it for a TD as well. So we don't know the circumstances. Don't want to speculate. We know Lewiston was 0-9 last year. So again, this game was mutually agreed to end with the Bombers leading, and they get the win here. So good start for the Bombers.
Yep. One more game in the Lincoln Land Big Side. It was a crossover game for Mercer County. They went up against Monmouth United. Mitch, this was one of my viewpoints to start this podcast. I'm really impressed with United's efforts here against a Mercer County team that we think is very talented. This is the first. United gets the win 14-6 on the road in Aledo. This is the first victory ever in the series for the Red Storm. Now, United had beaten Aledo Westmer years back before the consolidation, but this was the first time that United had beaten a Mercer County football team. What a win here. I mean, United won the turnover battle. I believe they had 3 or 4 turnovers. They got 3 or 4 turnovers, and they did not turn the ball over at all. That's a recipe for winning football any way you slice it. They capitalized on a Mercer County fumble in the first quarter. They grabbed an early 8-0 lead, and right away I was impressed. I mean, they jumped out. They were playing with a lot of confidence. They capitalized on a mistake by Mercer County. They grabbed that lead, and it really felt like United was, they were believing. They were playing really tough. But I still, in the back of my mind, thought Mercer County has a lot of talent. They have a lot of weapons. They're going to be able to capitalize in this one, and they're going to be able to flip the script here. And sure enough, even in that first couple drives where Mercer County kind of looked clunky, they were trying to get themselves moving. Even when I didn't feel like they were moving the ball that well, then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, there's a Colby Cox to William Fredrickson 50-yard pitch and catch. And I thought, okay, here we go. Like, Mercer County's going to have more of this throughout the game. But again, I give credit to United. They really held strong. They did not let Mercer County do as much or anything as they wanted to do on offense. In the second quarter, it looked like Colby Cox had connected with Fredrickson again for another huge touchdown pass. This one was called back for holding. So Mercer County was doing themselves no favors. But this United defense, they held up all game. They hold a Golden Eagles team to 6 points, a team that we're pretty excited about this year.
Yeah, I think we learned more about United than we did about Merco in this one. So we thought United would have some pieces to maybe get back into that playoff, that playoff 5-win kind of range. But boy, this is quite the win for Coach Milroy here to get again on paper week 1. An upset victory over Merco. So you have in your notes that you were impressed by Tony Rodriguez and Jacob McElwee.
Yep.
United, good downhill runners. When you have that physicality, you're going to win a lot of ball games. So good start here for the Red Storm.
Yeah, I liked what I saw to those 2 running backs. Like you mentioned, they just seemed like they were always fighting for that extra yard. They were really, finding their blocks, getting around them, and really scratching, clawing everything they could. In this game, obviously, close game, 14-6 final. Mercer County had their chances in the second half. They had opportunities to win this game. They weren't able to get it done. But again, I go back to this Red Storm team did not break. They were able to hold strong, come away with this win. Like I said, I was surprised. I was very, impressed with what the Red Storm did here. I think it's a great start to their season. Coach Milroy was our coach of the year a couple years ago when they made their playoff push. So obviously we've been impressed with what he's done, and I was impressed with this one. Mitch, a great uniform matchup. I don't know if you saw my pictures on Twitter, but this was a really solid matchup of 2 good-looking uniforms.
Yeah, I mean, we've always been a fan of both teams. Certainly, United has had that classic, Miami U logo ever since their inception. Now, you've got notes here. We just talked about this with Kiwani. They're only utilizing it on one side of the helmet, and that irks you. I know it does.
Yeah. So both teams, Mercer County and United, have their school logo on one side and then numbers on the other. And I mean, for Mercer County, I think it works. And for United, it's okay. But man, I think that U is such a classic, balanced logo. It would look great on both sides. I just think it would look great. I wish they did it on both sides. Either way, I like the way I like both teams' uniforms. I like both teams' color schemes. So,
Yep. All right.
Yeah. All right. We getting into the Lincoln Land Conference small school side of things here. Roval Williamsfield goes on the road. They get a nice win over Havana, 29-20. Cougars begin their 23 campaign with a win behind 332 yards of offense on the night. Quarterback Riley Danner finishes 19 of 33, 218 yards and a pair of touchdowns. Talon Hull led the receiving corps with 111 yards, 6 catches. Spencer Brown and Jack Godsell scored as well. So, this is a good start for this ROWVA Williamsfield team. It's a good road win in week 1.
Yeah, really impressed with what they did here on the road. We knew that this team had a lot coming back. We knew that Danner was going to be able to put up numbers again this year, so this is a good start for him. Talon Hull, like you mentioned, 111 yards on 6 catches. Also was really big on defense for the Cougars. Speaking of that, Devontae Noel played the role of Duck Hunter on the night here. Again, how many kids listen to the show know what was that even the name of the game?
Yeah, I think it was. Hunter? Yeah, well, it was the game that came with like Mario Brothers, right? It was like Duck Hunt.
It came with us with the NES. Yeah.
Yeah, was it Duck Hunt?
Wait. Was it Duck Hunter?
Duck Hunt or Duck Hunter?
No, I gotta look it up. Anyway, along with Talon Hull, he came up huge defensively because he had 2 interceptions, and certainly that in a close game, you want to see production like that to keep Havana, keep that offense keep that offense off of the field. So really good performance on both sides of the ball for ROWVA Williamsfield here, doing things that we expected them to do, and looking forward to seeing how they continue to play well. Tune-up game in week 2 against Lewiston, I think, and yeah, they should be looking at a good 2-0 start here.
Yeah, Mitch, it was Duck Hunt.
Okay.
And it was developed and published in 1984. So there is no way that these players are familiar with Duck Hunt. But we move right along. Stark County gets the win 19-14 over Rushville Industry. The first ever meeting between these two schools. This was a tight battle. The Rebels retook a lead in the early part of the 4th quarter. They held on to get their first win of 2023. Luke Rewerts, 7 of 8 passing, 76 yards. His only incompletion was an interception, but either way, that's pretty efficient passing.
Yeah, he was also the leading rusher for Stark County with 68 yards on 6 carries and 2 scores that were both in the second half. So couldn't have asked for a better time to score. Both of those for Rewerts, who we're really excited about this season. With those scores, though, the credit has to also go to the Stark County defense. Rushville Industry rushed 55 times in this game for 248 yards. But we're held out of the end zone in the deciding quarter. So this Stark County unit really clamped up when they needed to, led by Matthew Bowser, who had 8 tackles. Charlie Holstrom had 6 tackles. So those 2 guys led that really good unit. But boy, getting run at 55 times to the tune of 248 yards could knock a team down. But credit for Stark County for sticking around and getting this win.
Yeah, I know. Talking to head coach Jade Nord, he mentioned, several weeks ago that this was a game in week 1, which, crazy as it sounds in week 1, this was maybe one of the more pivotal games on their schedule because it really could set the tone for them. And I think this is exactly how you want it to play out, right? It's a tough matchup. You're really tested, and your kids answer the call in week 1. So I think he was very happy with this week 1 victory, obviously. And I think it goes a long way in this Stark County team kind of keeping at where they were last year or building on where they were last year. And also, Mitch, we got to give a shout out to Stark County because they listen to the podcast while they're working out in the morning. Their morning workouts are to our podcast. So that's great.
Yeah. Well, even better when you're lifting in the early mornings after a win. So
that's true.
So spirits should be high. It probably tomorrow morning or Wednesday morning, whenever we get this out, whenever their next morning lift is. So we love the listenership. We appreciate the support and happy to cover these Rebels all season.
And also, I didn't realize until recently that Coach Nord is also Mr. Nord teaching pre-calc, which
Okay.
in a couple years, the farther my son gets in, he's now in junior high. The farther he gets along in high school, I might stop texting him about football and actually start texting him with like help on homework that I need help helping my son, because I'm at a loss when it starts getting into like junior high math. I'm kind of done. So
Yeah, that's a good contact to have for you moving forward. No question about it.
yeah, absolutely. All right, Mitch, a couple more scores in the Lincoln Land. Annawan Wethersfield gets the win 28-0 over South Fulton. This is a team, Mitch, this is a team in particular you're very high on. They get the win here in week 1. They look really good. Also, Princeville gets the win 30-13 over A-Town. So a few more scores there. Mitch, are we going to jump into week 2 here and dive into the matchups?
Mm-hmm.
All right, well, let's do it.
Yeah, the first one I'm looking at right off the bat, a Merco team that we just talked about needs a bounce back win.
Yep.
Going up against a team that we're familiar with in Peru St. Bede, who is coming off of a win over a always tough Tuscola team in week 1. So really intrigued by that matchup. Moving down, you've got Illini West at Elmwood Brimfield. Farmington up, they will host West Hancock. Really looking forward to that game. And this next one, Knoxville hosting Macomb. You've got Rova Williamsville versus Lewiston. A-Town versus South Fulton. Havana travels to Princeville. Here's another one. This is a really intriguing week here. Annawan Wethersfield versus Stark County, and United versus Rushville. So, there's 3 games right there that are going to play a huge part in determining who wins each division, right? So, I'll kick it to you as to what game you might be looking at the most here in week 2.
Well, when I start looking down this list, I'll start with, I think the game that I'm going to be walking the sidelines is Stark County at Annawan Wethersfield. That's a game I'm intrigued by in week 2. It seems like a pivotal matchup, for this Stark County team. They're riding some momentum now. They played a really good game against Rushville Industry. This is a big test, right? This is a big test against an Annawan Wethersfield team that we've talked about a lot, is primed for a great season. But I'm interested to see how this one is. This an opportunity for Stark County to steal a big win on the road in what had been traditionally over the years a big, a rival,
Yeah. Again, you're talking about moving up into 2-0 in conference play on the small school side. And I think they'll be right there with Rova at the end of the week 2. So this will go, again, a long way to determining who might be in the driver's seat or right there in the small school division. So really looking forward to that game. On the big school side, Knoxville and Macomb, 2 really good programs over the past couple of years. And Farmington and West Hancock, same thing. Really looking forward to both of those offenses going up against one another. So this is a really, really intriguing week here in the LLC. Business as usual on the LLC, Greg, as we like to say.
Absolutely.
And yeah, I think there are some key matchups that'll have season-long implications here in just a couple days.
Well, the last one before we wrap this up is Mercer County. How do they bounce back? They go on the road now. Peru St. Bede coming off an impressive win, like you said, against Tuscola in week 1. How do they bounce back? I think Mercer County has all the pieces there, and I just think they need to clean up a little bit. They kind of were their own worst enemy at times in that game against United. Can they right that? Can they right themselves? And I think if they can play, a well-rounded game there offensively, defensively, I think they can hang with a Peru St. Bede team that they're impressive. They have Max Bray, a quarterback transferred in this year from Aurora Christian. And actually, being from Ottawa, which is not too far from LaSalle, Peru, I had heard a little bit about Max Bray. He grew up in the area and still lived in the area and had been going to high school up in Aurora and had family situation that kind of brought him back closer to home. So now he's transferred into St. Bede for his senior year. He's put up great numbers over the years for an Aurora Christian team that has been in the playoffs. You know, they've been bounced in the playoffs by some of our local NUIC teams, but still, you know, he was a great athlete.
Yeah.
So that's, you know, can Mercer County's defense be able to slow him down? I think that's an interesting matchup. But I'm more concerned with, or what I really want to see is, I want to see Mercer County kind of hit their stride. I want to see them get in sync and kind of do what we know this offense can do and what they're capable of.
Yeah, you said it. So again, one of the many intriguing games here in week 2 in the LLC.
Yep. Let's jump into the Northwest Upstate Illini. We'll start with the defending state champions, Mitch. Lena Winslow gets the 68-0 win over West Carroll. The defending state champs doing what defending state champions do. The Panthers roll to the tune of 350 rushing yards, 6 touchdowns. Gage Dunker, Nick Tippett, Blake Duncan, Alec Schlichting, and Eli Klecker all scored for the Panthers. So just a lot of fireworks for this Lena Winslow Panthers team in week 1. But it was all part of a great night, an even bigger night, not just on the field, but for head coach Rick Arend.
Yeah, this was cool. The field at Lee Win is now going to be known forever as Rick Arend Field. So this was a special moment. There's a great picture that Kyle at NUIC football posted of Coach and his family. So a great moment, obviously well deserved for Coach Arend. Special night for his family there on Friday night, alongside a great win. So yeah, this was cool to see. So much deserved for Coach Arend. Couldn't happen to a better person and a better coach.
Yep. Another team off to a great start in the Northwest Upstate Illini. How about the Dakota Indians? Kind of a tricky offseason. They've had to deal with a coaching change late in their offseason. They come away with the 48-12 win over Fisher. Indians jump out to an early lead, never look back on this one. Coach Didich gets a win in his debut. Benny Gordon has 134 yards and 3 touchdowns. Jason Bowers added 116 yards and 2 touchdowns. Tristan Alexander also scored on the ground. The Indians' air attack showed some signs of life as well. Nolan Mayberry had a touchdown pass to Braxton Niedermeyer. So a really good effort for the Indians right off the bat here in week 1.
Okay. This is where I'm going to go on my soapbox for a minute, Greg.
Yeah, I was kind of waiting for this. Yeah.
I text you about this, and it doesn't have anything to do with Dakota or Fisher directly.
Okay.
But, okay. And this is me going directly after Lee Enterprises.
Oh, here we go. Okay.
Who is the conglomerate that own a bunch of local newspapers.
Yep. Including the Quad City Times. Yep.
Right. Including the Times, the Dispatch.
Yep.
The Herald and Review, Muscatine Journal, like all of them.
Yep.
And we talked about this when we talked to Edgy Tim about the landscape of media and how these corporations come in, buy up these newspapers, and just slash the departments. And sports is always one to go.
Yeah.
I've noticed over the years that and again we read a lot of the game recaps. We try and support our local reporters as much as we can. Sometimes, and this is one of those times that I was trying to find a writing recap of this game, that you'll find one and you'll think, great, here's a recap. That same recap exists on 4 or 5 different websites.
I know. I already know. Yep.
And it is written by AI.
I know.
This one in particular, the Dakota game, references that both teams went through a Rip Van Winkle experience.
What?
Which is not an appropriate thing to say about high school football, because the Rip Van Winkle is a short story that describes a man who gets drunk and passes out and misses the American Revolution. Not really an appropriate reference to make about high school football. So if you don't know what I'm talking about, do it with this game. Look up Dakota Fisher football, and it'll be whatever publication. I think it's Pantagraph or something.
Yeah.
Read the review and tell me that a human person wrote that, and you will never see one that looks like a person wrote it. So that's my soapbox. That to Lee Enterprises, just cut this crap, pay your people, and you're not fooling anybody with this crap. So, and the only reason that kind of got me is because I saw that Gannett, who is also a big media conglomerate who owns a million newspapers, they got caught doing it because their AI results were showing like placeholder, like Team A, insert mascot here, like in brackets in this recap,
Yeah.
won this game, and like I should just start tweeting out some of those screen caps because they're all terrible, and it's just that's my soapbox to these conglomerates. Shout out to all of the sports writers that work for them, or any sports writer who don't anymore. Your work is appreciated more than you ever know. This crap is ridiculous. I hate it, and it just makes me mad. And
Yeah, I think it's called Lead AI Sports Desk. That's you see it, that's the byline of quote unquote who
Terrible.
wrote it. And yes, I've seen them for the past couple years, and they're so bad. They're so bad. I agree. I think the one thing before we move along, I think the one thing I will remind everyone is when people get frustrated with no one covers these teams anymore. No one's going to our games anymore. There's no reporter there. I think we have to remember to not to remind ourselves to not be critical of the individuals that aren't showing up there, or the newspaper that used to cover your team. Please don't blame a local newsroom, because there are some people in those newsrooms that, man, they're working their tails off, and they're not getting paid really well, and they're working a ton of hours, and there's someone in upper management who probably doesn't even live anywhere near where you are that is making decisions that are very unfortunate for local coverage. So I think I just want to always make that reminder.
Oh yeah, it has nothing to do with the publications, because we have a lot of friends at the Times, we have a lot of friends at the Dispatch.
Yep.
Nothing to do with those papers. They are put up against the wall sometimes when it comes to these corporations coming in and buying the operation. So, yeah, just blame Lee Enterprises is my thing.
Hey, Mitch.
Terrible.
Every year we get a little bigger. Eventually, we're gonna hire a staff. We're gonna cover games. We're gonna be doing all that stuff. So we'll fill that void. We'll fill that void as well as we can every year, and we'll just continue to grow and more coverage. So
yeah, that's right.
All right. Well, how about one of the marquee matchups that we anticipated going into this week one? Forreston gets the 22-18 win over Fulton, trailing 18-8 at halftime. The Forreston Cardinals storm back. They avenge a tough loss to the Steamers last season. They get the win in this one. Caleb Sanders, a name we've been familiar with, scored from 17 yards out with just under 6 minutes left to play to seal the win. He also added the 2-point run to push the lead. So good win for this Forreston team. But man, I was impressed on both sides of the ball, on Forreston's side and on Fulton's side.
Yeah, let me read you a quote from Fulton coach Patrick Lower, and tell me if this sounds familiar. Their power running game got us at the end. If that doesn't describe every Forreston team that's ever existed. Because as you mentioned, Fulton jumped out to a really quick start. I liked what I saw from their new quarterback, Don Kramer, and the whole Steamer attack. But in the end, this Forreston team just battled and just wore down Fulton. It's a credit to Forreston. It certainly is a credit to Coach Janicki. But again, this really started right after halftime. The second play of the second half was a turning point. Sophomore Carson Akins picks off Fulton's Don Kramer, and that kicked off a 57-yard scoring drive, and that put Forreston kind of back within a score there. And that's really when the momentum shifted. You could tell a bolt of lightning goes through Fulton. Maybe it deflates, or sorry, goes to Fulton. Oh, sorry. Bolt of lightning goes to Forreston and maybe deflates Fulton a little bit, because that's when you kind of saw things changing. And again, with Coach Lower's quote, when you have a team like Forreston who is just ground and pound all the way, it's going to wear you down. So a classic Forreston win, really, all things considered.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree that this is what you expect out of Forreston. I will say, looking back at our preview episode of the NUIC and looking back in the previews form that I had gotten from Coach Lower, I liked a lot of what he had to say about his players. And I wanted to see if that would be validated in week one. I wanted to see how good this Fulton team was, because I felt pretty good about this Forreston team, knowing that they had a lot of pieces. They were kind of ready to go this year. I think I'm equally, like I said in the beginning, I'm equally as impressed with Fulton in this one as I am with Forreston. I think Fulton's going to win a lot of football games this year. They fell just short in this one, but I think their players are going to learn. They're going to see what happened in this one. They're going to come out with some wins. They're going to close out some games this year as a reflection of this one. This game will be a motivating factor moving down the way.
Yeah, I was really impressed with Don Kramer this night. He had 179 yards passing. We've talked about Valen Damhoff in the past being a big-time receiver for them. Certainly their defense played well, because, again, if you can hold Forreston to 8 points in any half, that's a really, really good job well done. So I don't anticipate this to take away from Fulton's season at all. This was a 3 versus 4 matchup. You knew it was going to be close. You knew it was going to be good, just like every game between these two programs. So Forreston finally gets some revenge here. So a great game, a great week 1 game, and again, looking forward to both teams moving forward.
Yeah. A quick shout out to our man Tony Z. He has his podcast. I guested on his podcast last week.
Yeah.
He's starting things up, covering local high school sports. So great to hear him on the call here for Fulton. He does a great job. He was there at this one, heard some of his highlights. They sounded great. He covers Fulton all year long. He's live streaming, doing great play-by-play. Mitch, Forreston had new white helmets. Your thoughts?
I'm still trying to get used to it. I think that's the thing. I don't think they look bad. They went all black, white lid, black jersey, black pants. So I like that look. On the Iowa side, that's what Davenport Assumption does, and I think it looks nice. It's just getting used to it, I think. But in a game like this, where you have two teams with the exact same color schemes, it was nice to mix it up that way.
Yep. I thought it. Yeah, I like on its own. I like that white helmet for Forreston. I think it's an improved look. The red was always kind of that classic look. They've had it for several years, but the white really pops to me. So we'll see how it looks when they go on the road.
If I can make one, I don't think these are new Forreston uniforms as a whole, but if I can make one point, looking at the picture, the stripes don't match. That's on the jersey. I know. On the jersey, you've got a predominant thicker red stripe with white outline.
Okay.
And on the pant, it's a thick white stripe with thin red trim. So they invert a little bit. So again, not the nitpick, but I can see it.
Okay, that doesn't bother me as long if the colors are flipped, but the stripes are the same style. Doesn't bother me as much, but I know it gets you. So
I don't even know it gets the same style. So that's
okay. All right. Well, Galena gets the 28-6 win over Eastland Pearl City. Mitch, we were high on Eastland Pearl City coming into this year. They missed the playoffs a year ago. On the Galena side of things, we didn't know a whole lot of what they had back. We were kind of curious to see what they would look like. This is an impressive win for the Pirates.
This was a weird game because looking at the box score, EPC outgained Galena, and they never punted.
Wow, that is weird.
They lost by 3 scores. For Galena, Jack Reese, Miles Schumacher combined for 179 yards and 4 touchdowns on the ground. I think the biggest difference when you see like the unusualness of a box score like that, it was the 2 interceptions that the Pirate defense got. That helped them certainly shut them down most of the game. It shut them out in the entire second half. So, yeah, again, a weird game to look at on paper, but a great win for Galena, no question.
Yeah, like we said, I think if you're holding an Eastland Pro City team like this to 6 points, I think you're doing a great job, because we were pretty high on the pieces they had coming back from a team that was kind of in the mix last year. They didn't finish a lot of games, but they were in the mix. They had played well. So I think if you're holding that team to 6 points, that's a great way to start your season for Galena. Curious to see where they go from here. And also, I think this Eastland Pearl City team, does this motivate them? Does this bounce back for them? Can they steal a win along the way that maybe we don't expect, that, will get them back in that playoff conversation for sure?
Yeah, Jackson Kemble had a nice night. He scored the lone touchdown for the Wildcats. It was a 37-yard touchdown in the second quarter. And he led their rushers with 90 yards on 12 carries. So good production. And again, this team outgained Galena. So whatever coaches are going to see on the tape, they were doing something right. They just didn't come away with a victory. So, but again, all credit to Galena in this one. A great win for the Pirates.
Yep. One more game to cover here in the Northwest Upstate Illini. Dupec gets the 20-16 win over Stockton. Dupec pulls out the late game victory. They were behind 16-8 in the second quarter. They still were staring at a 16-14 halftime deficit, but they come back and grab this win. Mitch, this was a great game, great effort by Stockton. Really good win in week 1 for Dupec.
Yeah, and again, I think we said it in the United thing. I think we learned more about Stockton than we did than we learned about Dupec. We expect Dupec to be a top team competing for the NUIC title this year. We knew Stockton would be a little bit better than they were last year, but to come out week 1 and compete against a really, really good Cooper Hoffman team, I think speaks a lot about the Blackhawks this year. So for Stockton, Tanner Gilly and Carl Hubb each ran for over 60 yards. It was Cooper Hoffman, though, always being that key piece of this Dupec offense. He passed for 154 yards and 2 touchdowns. The best, Greg, was the game winner.
Yes.
Late in the fourth.
Yes.
So Scott Lieber with WTVO
yes
has a great video of it. A couple other people that are standing in the sidelines have shared the angles. Hoffman rushes to his right and just kind of throws one up to Brody Black.
What a catch. Yeah.
Corner of the end zone. Odell Beckham's this thing. One hand grab, pulls it in. It is an awesome touchdown. It was the game winner. So yeah, what a way to win that one. I'm watching it as I talk about it right now.
Yeah.
A very, very, very nice grab, play of the year type of candidate type of play. So yeah, great win. Great win for Dupec to kind of win under, adversity, pulling out late against a really motivated Stockton team. So, but again, I think we learned maybe more about Stockton this year. So looking forward to seeing how they move forward. They match up with Hayworth next week in a crossover game with the LLC. So a Hayworth team that we talked about that beat West Hancock. So yeah, this was a great game. And again, I think we retweeted it. We could do it again, but that play with Brody Black sealing that win, this was great.
Yeah, I just reposted it. And yeah, shout out to Scott Lieber. Great coverage out of the Rockford area for WTVO. So unbelievable catch, great video. And I love, man, he slowed it down. You just see the one-handed, like you said, it's Odell Beckham-esque. It's great.
Yeah. That's a Greg Armstrong edit, I think. Slowing it down and making sure the fans can see all the details. I've seen you do that before.
Yeah, you have to. I love it. All right. Well, let's talk about week 2 here. A lot of exciting matchups. I think the marquee one, Fulton hosting Lena Winslow. That's a game that stands out to me. You also have Dakota hosting Forreston. Galena goes on the road to West Carroll. Eastland Pearl City hosts Dupec. Stockton in the non-conference game against Hayworth, a Hayworth team we talked about who got the win over West Hancock out of the LLC in week 1. So, Mitch, what do you see here?
Yeah, I don't know how you look past Leewin Fulton as the game of the week. Certainly, unfortunately, you can't take a whole lot of stock in what Leewin did against West Carroll. No offense to West Carroll. We're happy that you're back in 11-man, but we also understand it's a tough task to go against Leewin. So this will be. We saw what Fulton's defense was able to do to Forreston, to slow them down in the first half, and to score as well on offense. So can they regroup from a tough week 1 loss versus is Leewin? Correct me if I'm wrong. Leewin, I think it was a close game in the first half last year, and Leewin just completely cruised in the second half.
That sounds right. And then Lena Winslow really jumped on him in the playoff game. The playoff game wasn't nearly as close. But yes, I believe Fulton hung around, challenged them in the regular season. So yeah, I mean, for me, the question is, we've seen Lee win with this huge win in week 1. We know they're a great program. Is this year's individual team, where do they stack up? And I think that they're still very good, but is this a Fulton team that comes in motivated, comes in hungry? They'll be at home. Maybe, I don't know. Is there an opportunity for them to steal one here that it would be considered an upset, certainly, based on the track record that Lena Winslow has had over the years. But it's a game that's interesting to watch for sure.
And it'd be a pretty hard hole for Fulton. Well, if Fulton were to go 0-2, right? That's a hard pill to swallow. It's a tough hole to get out of. But you have just gotten rid of arguably your 2 hardest games of the season, right?
I would think so.
So not saying that Fulton's going to lose the Leewin. I think it's going to be a good game, but I'm just hypothetically saying if you were to finish this week at 0-2 and then looking forward at what you have coming up, I don't think it diminishes their chances whatsoever. So looking forward to that one. I do think that one probably would earn game of the week. I think from a conference perspective and placement in the conference standings at the end of the year, Dakota versus Forreston is going to play a big role, and the winner of this game is going to take that next step up. So both teams impressive for different reasons. Certainly Forreston played a harder opponent than Dakota did, but Dakota was nonetheless impressive. So 2 really good running teams who have had classic matchups in the past. And again, I think the winner will kind of be hanging around there with Leewin, maybe a little closer than the 3rd place team moving forward.
Yep. You look at Eastland Pearl City is hosting Dupec. We talked about Dupec coming away with that big win. It was a close one over Stockton. Can Eastland Pearl City, can they jump out? Can they, regroup after that loss to Galena? Like you said, they put up some numbers against Galena. They just weren't able to punch it in the end zone. Can they work towards getting, finishing some of those drives, making some big plays against the Dupec team that looks pretty good again,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Great set of 5 games here. So again, games that have implications on the conference standings, not only now, but even looking forward to week 9. We'll look back at these games and point to results that I don't know. I'm at a loss of words how I want to say it. We'll look back and point to these games.
Yep.
As reasons as to why teams are placed where they are at the end of the year.
Yep. And that last one before we wrap it up, Stockton and Hayworth in a non-conference game. Hayworth got the win in week 1 over West Hancock, but I do think this is an opportunity based on how Stockton showed up against Dupec. I think this is a chance for them to get in the win column, go to 1-1, and then jump back into the Northwest Upstate Illini schedule and see if they can make some noise. This is a Stockton program that wants to be back in the playoffs. They're not satisfied any other way. So I think this matchup against Hayworth is potential there. So, all right, we'll talk a little bit of 8-man before we wrap things up here. And Mitch, when we're talking 8-man football, we got to start with the number 1 seed, the top ranked team in the state, the Amboy Clippers. They get the decisive, no doubt win, 46-0 over Decatur Unity. Top seeded Clippers looked every bit the part. They starting the running clock just 52 seconds into the second quarter. They were up 32-0. Offense, defense, special teams. This team kind of did it all. Did you get a chance to see any of this one? Did you follow this one at all?
I was able to follow it. It started, I think it was the first game to start on Friday. So maybe it wasn't as hot in Amboy because a lot of games got pushed through the heat. So this game was going on before any of the other ones, but it was, I think Corey Cutter was there, and it was just kind of score as the updates came through. Probably the biggest one, like you said, offense, defense, special teams were all working. They had a pair of interceptions. The biggest one was a blocked punt return for a TD. I think this was the second score of the game. Got to give our shout out to the big man, junior lineman Caleb Sugars. I hope it's Sugars. I really hope it's Sugars. He scooped up the kick out of the block and returned it 19 yards. His first high school touchdown. So we love when that happens. Great player from that unit. Brennan Blaine, who we talked about, he scored 3 first half touchdowns. So this was a walk in the park for the Clippers. Great start to their campaign as they start heading towards a championship drive.
I mean, Mitch, Brennan Blaine touchdowns for Amboy are fun, but come on, a lineman touchdown, that's where the real fun starts.
That's where the money is. Yeah.
All right. Well, looking down the rankings, Polo, the number 2 team in 8-man football, they get the 62-14 win over Peoria Heights. A quarterback name we're very familiar with, Brock Soltow, rushed for 110 yards, 3 touchdowns on 14 carries, also completed 2 of 3 passing for 61 yards and a score. Polo bolted out to a big win here. Noah Dewey had 2 catches for 61 yards and a score. Bill Lowry also had a 40-yard touchdown grab, and Carter Meridian had a Bill Lowry touchdown catch from Carter Meridian late in the game. So great effort from Polo here in week 1.
Yep. Brock Soltow was hurt last year. Am I remembering that right? He was hurt for part of the year?
I think I don't know if he was in and out, but I know that Avery Grenoble was hurt. He was the senior last year, and then Soltow was. Yep.
Yeah, we've certainly talked about Soltow the past couple of years, so good to see him. Whether he was hurt last year or not, good to see him in command of this offense. So great win here for Polo to kick off the year.
Yep. Number 3 team in the state in 8-man football, Milledgeville, gets the win 48-0 over River Ridge. Connor Nye, 5 touchdowns on the afternoon, 190 total yards. Mitch, it's Connor Nye. If we're talking Milledgeville football, we're going to be talking about him.
It's Connor Nye in a new alternate uniform there.
I know. How about that?
Coach Roble, Morrison grad, coming in clutch with the all orange uniform there for the Missile. So good look there. I hand up. I like the all black. It's a great look, but love to see an orange all. It was nice.
Yep. Yeah. Looked really good. Connor Johnson had a touchdown reception. Spencer Nye also scored on the ground and had a safety for the Missiles as well. So great start for Milledgeville, a team that we expect to rack up some wins this year. I mean, Connor Nye feels like we've been calling his name for 5 years or more, but they're going to be playing that air siren quite a bit there in Milledgeville, I think, this year. So, yep, he's an impact player for sure. I got my sights set. I'm going to make it to a Milledgeville game. It'll be a few weeks from now, but I'm going to be there for sure. That's a must stop every year. So, a few other games to go ahead.
Sorry, you got in week 3. Well, no, this is at Polo. Just looking ahead to see when you can get to
Oh,
Milledgeville. You
I
are
think. What do you think
you're
about
looking at week 6. Week
No.
6.
What do you think about week 4? Week 4, I start in Milledgeville, and then I head to
Okay.
Sterling.
Okay. Just saying, week 6, Amboy at Milledgeville.
Ooh, that's okay. Okay. Well, I'd have to look ahead and see if Sterling or Newman
Something about.
Sterling or Newman, if they're at home, then I could pair that up real nice.
Yeah.
All right. All right. Well, a few more 8-man scores to cover. West Central falls to Flanagan Cornell Woodland 35-20. Ridgewood, the Spartans. Mitch, they're off to a great start after a great year last year. They defeat Pawnee, a Pawnee team that was pretty good a year ago. They defeat them 44-0. So very decisive win. Very interested to see just how good the Spartans are this year. They get the win there. West Prairie beats Galva 56-6. And Orangeville gets the win over Ashton Franklin Center 46-12. The Broncos were only 1-8 a year ago, and they already have a win on the board in 23. So great start for them.
Yep, absolutely. Looking ahead here to week 2, you've got Amboy going to River Ridge. You've got Quest Charter, who I can honestly tell you, I have no clue who that is. Going
Peoria,
to
they're from
Milledgeville.
Peoria. But yeah.
Okay. You've got a classic 8-man matchup here, Polo at Orangeville. That's a 1 p.m. kickoff on Saturday. And then you got Alden Hebron going to Ashton Franklin Center for Friday night kickoff. So another great start for 8-man. Looking forward to the season, but as we kind of talked about, the top 3 teams really kind of showing that their rankings are true, all putting up huge wins, and throw Ridgewood in there too. So great start here in 8-man.
Yeah, did you mention that Ridgewood will be hosting West Central in week 2? So there's another a Lincoln Trail rivalry there, meeting up in 8-man football. So, yep. All right, Mitch. Well, I think this week I'm gonna start at Anawan Wethersfield in Stark County, and then I'm gonna head down the road. Kewanee Boilermakers are also at home. They're playing Erie Prophetstown. And then the beauty of being that close in Kewanee is if I want to head back and end up, whichever game is closest, I can end up there. So I'm excited to be in Kewanee. Usually, knock on wood, I've had pretty good luck sending back video from there. Signal's usually very strong, so I don't have to worry about hustling back to the station. I can stick it out, stay till the end of the game, get good highlights. I'm excited for those two. I'm excited to have a football Friday in Kewanee.
Yeah, just kind of recapping, a lot of great games that I'm looking forward to seeing how things shake out. Moline versus Bennett there in the Western Big Six. You've got in the track what we talked about a lot with Morrison going to Princeton. Newman and Sherrard is going to play a big factor in the LLC. Great games. Can Mirko bounce back against Peru St. Bede? You've got Farmington and West Hancock, Knoxville at Macomb, Anawan Wethersfield and Stark County. And then in the NUIC, like we talked about, we're looking at Dakota hosting Forreston and Lee Win on the road at Fulton. So a lot of great games this week. Really looking forward to seeing our teams, and then we'll be talking about them next week.
Absolutely. We'll be right back here talking about it. I'll be out covering games on Friday night. Mitch, you'll be watching the NFHS Network and watching Tiger Central live. That will be a big one against Morrison. You'll keep everybody posted on Twitter. And I can't wait to get into another week of high school football here.
Yep, we're in it now. So great games to be had, and looking forward to it.
Yep. Well, thank you to everyone who listens. I encourage you to go back, if you haven't already, go back and listen to our Instant Reacts podcast. We bring that to you late night every Friday night. It gets posted about 2 a.m. usually. Usually it goes live about 2 a.m. on Podbean. You can listen to it on Saturday morning if you're not still awake. But we'll have that every Friday night, and then we'll be back every Tuesday morning. We'll have this podcast out to you bright and early so you can get your high school football fix. We, of course, always want to thank our sponsor, Breedlove Sporting Goods. Thank you so much to Breedloves. Mitch, we'll be in communication, but we will talk next week on the pod when we get just a little bit more information how this season is going to play out.
Sounds good. We'll see everyone on Friday night.
That'll do it for this week's episode of View from the West. Thank you so much for listening. I encourage you to go out to Apple Podcasts or Podbean and subscribe so you can follow along, and downloads will come automatically every week. You can follow along on Twitter at ViewFromWestPod. You can also email me if you're interested in being a sponsor, viewfromwestpod@gmail.com. Thanks so much. We'll see you next week.